Hi everyone, my name is Courtney and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my worst books of 2021. I didn't film this video last year, not because I'm not for some mean-spirited book hate, but just because I wasn't feeling it, you know? And to be honest, I wasn't thinking I was gonna do one this year, but then I don't know, I was inspired. But I will preface this by saying I don't think any of these are bad books. I don't even think they're the worst books I read because very little of them are under a 2-star for me. They were just books that didn't work for me. I would say most of them are 2.75 stars, 3 stars, maybe even some high 3 stars. And why did I give them higher than a 3-star? Why would I give a book a 3.5 star but think of them as the worst books I read? That might be because they work on a craft level, they work as books, they just didn't work for me. So I was bored reading them, but I didn't think they were bad, if that makes sense. If you watch my favorite books of the year video, you will see this, but it's I just read a lot of middle of the road stuff. A lot of stuff didn't really get me in my feels. There were a lot of books that I thought were well written. I just was not moved by them. It was just an off reading year in general. I think that's just because of graduating and finishing school and moving and everything. Also the pandemic. 2021 was a year. Anyway, let's get into the books that didn't work for me in 2021, or my least favorite books of the year. So, to start us off, we have Paybacks of Witch. This is an adult rom-com with a little bit of a fantasy twist. This girl is from a witchy small town, and she's traveling back there to be the arbiter of this witch competition. And it's sapphic. She starts to fall in love with one of the people competing. Very cute, very sweet. I just was bored reading it. I thought it was well developed for a romance novel, but I just don't think I like romance novels. I think if this was a movie, I would have loved it. It would have been a 10 out of 10 movie, but just reading it, it wasn't doing it for me. The next book I have on here is The Witch King by E.H. Edgman. This is a young adult fantasy series about a trans boy, another witch, and he is having to travel back to the elven world, which he grew up in, to kind of face the blood oath or whatever engagement thing that he has. And it's pretty traumatic for him because there's a lot of people there that he does not get along with, that think he just is not a great person because he has a very dark, mysterious past that he has to deal with. And I wanted to love this book. Obviously, this is a debut author. A lot of people are really connecting with this book, and I'm really, really happy for those people, but it just didn't work for me. I just did not enjoy it. I thought the plot was a little bit all over the place. I just thought some of the writing wasn't super great. It just didn't end up being for me. The next book I have here is The House on the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune, another booktube favorite right now, and I'm so happy that people are getting so much enjoyment out of this book. This is an adult romance, fantasy, slice of life story. It's about this caseworker who goes to this orphanage or foster home where magical children live, and he falls in love with the caretaker of these magical children. And it's sweet, it's charming, all of that kind of stuff, but it just didn't work for me. I can see why people like this, but it was just a little too sickly sweet. I thought some of the kids were just a little bit too, I don't know, kids are really hard to write in my opinion, and this just didn't do it for me. It was just a little over the top cheesy, and there were just stuff I wanted more of. And yeah, I can see why people like this book. It was a 3-star for me. It was kind of meh. The next book I have is The Remains of the Day by Kazu Ishiguro. This has some big award for it, I believe. So I'm sorry. It's basically about is it an unreliable narrator or a blindsided narrator? This British servant recounting his life while he's traveling. And I get it. I get why it's very notable in the literary fiction genre, but it was just kind of meh for me. All of Kazu Ishiguro's books have just been kind of mid-level for me. I don't know why. I'm sorry. I had to read this for class. It just didn't do it for me. It was fine. Another 3-star. The next book I have is Winter's Orbit. This is a sci-fi romance story where the young character is kind of forced into an arranged marriage with another person. This is a male-male love story, and it just didn't work for me. I was going into the book with certain expectations of what this book was, and those were kind of flipped on its head. This ended up being a lot more focused on the fast, action-y kind of plot, and for me, I just didn't feel like I was given enough setup or details for that stuff to work, and for me, even the romance, just didn't give me enough of what I actually wanted. This book was ambitious. It was trying to do a lot of different things and talk about a lot of different topics. I'm loving that people are really enjoying this book, but again, just not for me. Didn't work for me. The next book that didn't work for me was A Sky Beyond the Storm by Sabatahir. This is in the, what is this series called? The Ember and the Ashes series. In general, I just don't like the Ember and the Ashes series. And like, I know, why'd you keep reading it? I was invested enough. I wanted to know what happened to the characters. This wasn't quite as bad as the third book for me. I really disliked the third book a lot. I thought it was just really boring. Just in general, I don't love this series. I really don't like the two main characters. I don't like their romance. I think it's just really corny and it just didn't work for me. There were moments that I really enjoyed in this book, especially when Helene and Laya were like connecting. I really liked that in the beginning. And in general, I do enjoy Helene a lot. Overall, this is a YA fantasy with a very like strong, brooding romance, angsty romance. And again, I'm glad people are enjoying this. I'm really glad that this sticks home to people, that they like it, that it's tearing them apart. Like, I wish I was that person. But in general, I don't love YA fantasy as much as I thought I did. I just like a very specific type of YA fantasy, I think. I just don't tend to like plot focused fantasy, which I think this series is. It tries to have really strong characters and it succeeds in some aspects, but I think it is really focused on the plot, on the twists, and that just isn't my cup of tea. So yes, The Sky Beyond the Storm, it didn't work for me because the series didn't work for me in general, but this wasn't the worst thing I've read, and I'm really glad that people love this series because I wish I did. The next book I have here is Monsters of Men by Patrick Ness. This is the concluding novel in the Chaos Walking trilogy. Again, this was like, the series as a whole didn't really work for me. There were some elements, especially in the second book, that I really loved, but this third book as a whole just didn't work for me. I have a whole video talking about this book. I actually have a couple videos talking about the different books that I have already discussed, but this one I kind of talked about, does this book hold up in today? And I don't think it really does. If you don't know, this is like a sci-fi dystopian novel that is about a young man who is trying to like escape his home, which he's kind of learning is like kind of a cult. And in this world, everybody can hear men speak, and this young man growing up has never seen a woman. I will spoil some things. So throughout the entire series, we learn that they are actually on like a alien planet, and that this is like a sci-fi kind of story, like a Western flair or like pioneer flair to it. So this book is a lot about colonialism and colonization, but I don't think those themes really worked or really held up well. I think it was trying to do something, but I don't think it really worked on page. At the end of the day, my opinion probably isn't like the best for this because I am a white person, but to me, reading this with the alien characters being really a one-for-one stand-in for indigenous people and that depiction being kind of stereotypical just like didn't work for me. I think this book was trying to do something. I just don't believe it was successful and it just didn't work for me. And my final worst book of 2021, or book that did not work for me, was The Ones We're Meant to Find by Joan He. And this is another sci-fi, utopian, dystopian kind of story. It's about two sisters. One of them is living on an eco-city and the other one is living on a like deserted island and trying to find her sister or trying to find a way back. There were a lot of elements that I really did like about this novel. There was a lot of things that I really enjoyed, especially like the sister connection kind of thing and some of like the later plot reveal stuff. But overall, this book just like didn't come together and it didn't work for me. And I feel like the parts that were interesting to me were skipped over and the parts that I thought were disinteresting were like pretty main focused. So overall, it didn't work for me. As far as like honorable mentions, I feel like I have to mention Redemptor and The Hollow Heart, both of which were sequel and concluding novels into YA fantasy duologies that I was reading. I loved both of the first books, and the second books weren't bad for either one. The Hollow Heart was pretty disappointing, but I didn't give it like a bad star rating because a lot of the book I really did enjoy. And Redemptor it wasn't bad, it just needed a little bit more fleshing out, I feel. I feel like Redemptor could have been another 100 pages. The Hollow Heart similarly could have been another 100 pages. Both of those novels, they weren't bad, they just didn't work completely for me, and I was a little disappointed by them because I loved the first book so much. But yeah, those are the top 10 books that I didn't like this year, the top 10 books that didn't work for me. A lot of these are really popular and I can see why a lot of people are really drawn to them, why they read them, why they love them. I don't really think I have any cases of not understanding why someone could like this book. They're just not for me. They just weren't to my taste of reading. And I think that's one really good thing. Like, I didn't read any really bad books where I'm like, who could like this? Why would someone like this? There was no questioning there. I just knew that those books were not for me, and they just happened to be the ones that I liked the least. But yeah, I think this is going to do it for this video, but I would love to know your least favorite books as well as your favorite books. Let me know. I'll see you guys later, and happy reading.